The Kevin Jenkins Experience. A Deathworlder's tale of survival, power, and fear. There are moments in history that define everything. First contact, first war, first conquest. But some moments break the galaxy. This is one of them. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe, and join the fight. And if you want to support the channel, check out the Patreon, where the real war stories are told. Because what you're about to hear, it isn't just a story, it's a warning. The galaxy has its legends, its conquerors, its nightmares. But what happens when a new nightmare arrives? A nightmare that bleeds, that breaks, that falls, but refuses to die. A species born from a world of poison and predators. A race that laughs in the face of extinction and dares the universe to hit them harder. Most civilizations rise in peace. They grow under gentle suns, in safe havens, sheltered from the chaos of the cosmos. Humans? Humans were forged in fire. This is the story of Kevin Jenkins, a man who stepped into the void and showed the universe what true terror looks like. Before we begin, hit that like button, subscribe, and prepare yourself. Because this isn't just a story, it's a warning. Humanity is coming and the stars will never be the same. First contact. The Kevin Jenkins Experience routine check. Until it wasn't. The customs officer barely looked up as the next traveler approached. His job was simple: scan, clear, move on. Thousands of beings passed through this checkpoint. Every day. Most were predictable, but today was different. His console flickered. Scanning. The results came back. Error. Unknown species. The officer frowned. That was impossible. Every sentient species, every sapient race in the known galaxy was catalogued. Yet the being standing before him did not exist. Slowly, cautiously, the officer looked up, and for the first time in years, he felt something he wasn't supposed to feel. Fear, a small creature with predator's eyes. It was small, too small, a bipedal predator, standing just tall enough to peer over the customs desk. It had 4 limbs, each ending in 5 manipulating digits. Its posture was loose, but its eyes, predator's eyes, focused, unblinking, watching. Most of its body was covered in crude synthetic fabric, armor-like but flexible. The only visible flesh was on its face and hands, and then the officer saw it. A glint of metal. Embedded just above its ear, a cybernetic implant. Primitive, crude, but functional. Name? The officer asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The creature shifted its weight, adjusting the massive pack strapped to its torso, one far larger than any being of its size should be able to carry. Then it spoke. Kevin Jenkins. NEA. Impossible error. The officer's fingers twitched over his console. Species? He asked. The creature exhaled, slow and tired. Human. The screen flashed red. Species not classified. The officer's fur bristled. That error only occurred for non-sentient species. Your homeworld? Kevin adjusted his stance, rolling his shoulders with an unsettling fluidity. Earth. Category 12. Temperate. The officer's breath caught in his throat. Category 12. That was a death world. A bureaucratic nightmare. The officer's mind raced. Galactic law was clear. Pre-interstellar species were not considered sentient. By all legal definitions, Kevin Jenkins was an animal. A highly intelligent, dangerously advanced, bureaucratic nightmare of an animal. The officer had dealt with difficult cases before. But this was different. Why are you here? He asked. Kevin gave a wry smile. Because the court took me. The officer stiffened. That explained the cybernetics. The Corti, a race of small, gray-skinned scientists known for their cold precision and lack of ethics. They abduct pre-contact species, experiment on them, and once the species finally achieve space travel, they sell them the exact cybernetics their bodies are already primed for. Kevin Jenkins was one of their test subjects. Why not have the implant removed and return home? The officer asked. Kevin let out a bitter laugh. Because I'd never be able to keep the secret, and the Office for the Preservation of Indigenous Species won't let me. The officer nodded slowly. He understood now. Kevin couldn't go home. He didn't belong anywhere. Something off. The officer processed the information, trying to remain professional. But something felt wrong. Kevin was too calm, too relaxed. Most abductees were traumatized wrecks by the time they reached this point. Lost, confused, afraid. Kevin? Kevin was waiting. For what? The officer didn't know. But his instincts whispered something he wasn't ready to admit. This human was dangerous. The first alarm, then the station lurched. The sudden violent movement sent the officer sprawling. A howling alarm erupted through the immigration hall. Passengers screamed. Some bolted for the exits. Others froze in confusion. The officer pushed himself up, his fur bristling. His screen was flashing red emergency warnings. Then the second alarm went off. A deep, guttural tone. The kind that made your blood turn cold. Hull breach. But no decompression, which meant only one thing. The officer's breath caught in his throat. His heart pounded. No. Not here, he whispered. Kevin tilted his head. Them who? The officer swallowed, hard. He turned, eyes wide with fear. The doors slammed open, and they came in. The attack. A Death Worlder unleashed. The monsters arrived. The doors slammed open. The room froze. They stepped inside. Tall, armored, inhuman. Hunters. 7 glittering eyes scanned the immigration hall, each moving independently, processing targets with a cold, methodical precision. Their pale, ceramic white skin was unnervingly smooth. Their 4 cybernetic arms fused with heavy pulse weapons. 6 legs moved in perfect rhythm, their bodies stable, balanced, predatory. Their weapons hummed with energy. Their breathing was silent. Their intent? Clear. They were here to kill. And worse, they were here to eat. The officer's stomach dropped. Hunters were the only known carnivorous sentient species in the galaxy. They didn't just prefer meat, they preferred sapient meat. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some ran, some screamed. The weaker species collapsed in fear. The officer turned to the weapons locker, scrambling for a pulse gun. His heart hammered in his chest. But Kevin? Kevin didn't move. The Death Worlder stands. The hunters took one step forward. Kevin exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders. Something changed. His posture, once relaxed, became taut. The loose, casual stance disappeared, replaced by something sharper. The officer recognized it immediately. Readiness, a stance that belonged to a predator. The hunters scanned the crowd, calculating, assessing, choosing prey. Then they saw him. They hesitated. It lasted less than a second, a flicker of uncertainty, a microsecond of hesitation. But Kevin saw it, and Kevin grinned. The first shot of pulse blast tore through the air. A civilian shrieked, a small, delicate being from a low-gravity world. The shot caught them mid-stride, throwing them to the floor in a heap. The hunters had begun. More shots fired. The screams intensified. Kevin? Kevin moved. One moment, he was standing still. The next, he was running straight at them. The impossible charge. The officer's mind froze. This was suicide. The hunters' weapons were calibrated for war. Their armor could shrug off pulse fire. Their shields could withstand explosives, and yet, Kevin ran forward. The first shot hit him square in the chest. He staggered, but he didn't fall. The second shot came. The third, each hit, direct, brutal, and still Kevin kept running. The officer's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't possible. No species could take that kind of damage. But Kevin Jenkins? Kevin wasn't stopping. The first kill. The closest hunter hesitated. A mistake. Kevin reached it. One moment, it was preparing to fire. The next, Kevin's fist slammed into its skull. There was a sickening crack. The hunter staggered back, dazed. Its shields flickered, struggling to compensate. Kevin didn't give it the chance. His hands, small but impossibly strong, grabbed its cybernetic arm, and with a snarl, he ripped it off. The hunter shrieked. Black ichor sprayed from the wound. Its other arms twitched violently. Kevin didn't stop. He used the severed limb as a weapon. With terrifying, brutal efficiency, he brought it down like a club. Once, twice, 3 times. The hunter's skull caved in. Silence. The other hunters paused. They had never seen one of their own die. Not like this. The slaughter begins. Panic swept through the remaining hunters. Their prey had just killed one of them, and it wasn't slowing down. The second hunter opened fire, pulse rounds ripping through the air. Kevin dodged. His movements were fluid, unnatural, impossible. Each shot missed by inches. He was too fast. Then, he lunged, his hands locked around the hunter's neck. With a single, horrifying motion, he snapped it, a clean break. The hunter collapsed. The third tried to run. Kevin caught it, and in one final act of sheer brutal power, he ripped its leg off. The creature screamed. Then silence. Aftermath. The galaxy just changed forever. The battle was over. The hunters, dead. Their bodies lay in pieces, shattered, broken. The immigration hall was silent. Every being in the room was staring at Kevin. He stood among the wreckage, his breathing heavy, controlled. His hands coated in alien blood. The officer's pulse pounded in his ears. His mind refused to process what had just happened. Kevin Jenkins. A human, a species not even considered sentient, had just butchered 3 of the most feared creatures in the galaxy, and he had done it with his bare hands. The officer's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a fight. This was a warning. Warning to the entire galaxy. Because Kevin wasn't special. If there was one of him, there were millions. And they were still on Earth. The officer swallowed hard, because in that moment he realized something truly terrifying. The galaxy wasn't ready for humanity, and if they ever figured out how powerful they really were, nothing would ever stop them. The legend spreads. Humanity under scrutiny. The aftermath of a massacre. The blood hadn't even dried. The bodies of the hunters lay scattered across the immigration hall, broken, lifeless. Their once terrifying forms were now nothing more than ruined husks, victims of something they couldn't comprehend. Not a superior force, not advanced technology, not an army, one human. Kevin Jenkins stood at the center of the carnage, blood dripping from his hands, his breath slow and steady. The station had survived, but everything had changed. Galactic news, the Death Worlders, fury. The report spread like wildfire. News networks scrambled to cover it. Politicians whispered in hushed voices. Scientists demanded answers. The headlines spoke for themselves. Unknown species defeats hunters in hand-to-hand combat. Deathworlder survives multiple pulse rounds. How? Galactic Council panics over humanity. The footage was played on loop. Every species watched. Every civilization reacted, because this wasn't just a fight. This was proof. Proof that something terrifying existed, something they had ignored. And now it was too late. The Council scrambles. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. For centuries, their laws had been absolute. A species was only considered sentient if it had achieved interplanetary travel. And humans? Humans were still trapped on their primitive little rock. That meant, legally speaking, Kevin Jenkins didn't exist. But the problem? Kevin Jenkins was real, and worse, he wasn't alone. The research mission to Earth decision was made. A research station was ordered to investigate Earth, to understand what they were dealing with, to determine if humanity was a threat. The station was deployed, cloaked, hidden. It arrived in the Sol system orbiting Saturn. And the scientists inside? They saw things that made them question everything. What they discovered. Humanity was not supposed to exist. Earth was a nightmare. Gravity. Too strong. Climate. Unstable. Weather. Violent. Deadly. The entire planet should have been uninhabitable. And, yet it wasn't just inhabited. It was thriving. The researchers watched, horrified, as they studied the conditions that had shaped humanity. Predators, parasites, natural disasters, wars, starvation, disease. Any one of these would have wiped out a lesser species, but humans? Humans had survived them all. No, they had conquered them. Strength beyond logic. The more they studied, the worse it got. Human bones were denser than most armor materials. Human muscles were built for endurance, not speed, designed to hunt prey for days without stopping. Human minds were capable of adapting to nearly anything, and worst of all, their ability to heal. Kevin had survived multiple pulse rounds, something that should have been impossible. At first, they assumed it was a fluke, until they realized something truly terrifying. Humans didn't just survive injuries. They came back, stronger. Their muscles rebuilt themselves. Their bones became denser. Their bodies evolved to take more damage. They were designed to endure suffering. And the worst part? They liked it. A dangerous psychology. But strength wasn't the only thing that scared the researchers. Humans had something even worse. They were insane. They fought wars over ideas. They sacrificed themselves for beliefs. They were willing to die not just for survival but for meaning. No other species did this. Civilizations fought over resources, land, survival. Humans fought over gods, philosophies, personal vendettas. They didn't need a logical reason to go to war, they just needed a cause. And once they had one, they would stop at nothing. The Council's dilemma. The scientists sent their report back to the Council. The conclusion? Humanity cannot be classified as a normal species. They are too strong, too resilient, too unpredictable. If they ever learn how powerful they are, nothing will stop them. The Council was terrified because they knew humanity would reach the stars. It wasn't a question of if, it was only a question of when, and when they did, the galaxy would never be the same. Earth, a world of monsters and geniuses, a planet that shouldn't exist. The researchers had seen death worlds before, planets where nature was brutal, where life was a constant struggle. But Earth wasn't just a death world, it was something worse. The data poured in, more reports, more evidence. Everything confirmed the same horrifying truth. Earth should have been uninhabitable. Gravity too high, weather too unpredictable, seasons too extreme, predators too numerous, diseases too adaptable, land constantly shifting. Yet against all logic, all probability, humans had conquered it. And that was when the researchers realized they weren't just survivors, they were monsters, predators, prey, and the apex anomaly. Every planet followed the same rule. Life evolved toward balance. Predators and prey existed in harmony, not on Earth. Predators on Earth weren't balanced. They were relentless. Prey species weren't weak. They fought back. Even the plants and insects were deadly. Most species had one or two apex predators. Earth had dozens, yet none of them ruled the planet. Humans did. And humans weren't just predators. They were something new. They weren't the fastest. They weren't the strongest. They didn't have claws, fangs, armor, or venom. But what they did have? Intelligence, endurance, fire, tools, strategy. Humans weren't born apex predators. They became them. They learned how to use the world against itself. And then, they turned that same relentless adaptation on each other. The true horror, humanity versus humanity. The researchers had prepared themselves for the horrors of Earth. What they hadn't prepared for was what humans did to each other. They fought wars that lasted generations. They built weapons that could erase cities in seconds. They experimented on their own kind in the name of progress. Other species fought for resources. Humans fought for power, for ideology, for revenge. And the worst part? They never stopped. The researchers watched recorded footage of human history. They saw battles that defied comprehension, soldiers marching through toxic gas, fleets of ships raining fire from the sky, entire civilizations turning to ash. And somehow, despite all of it, they rebuilt. They didn't just survive war, they evolved from it. Where other species collapsed under war's weight, humans thrived in it. War wasn't just a part of their history, it was a part of them. A species that refuses to die, even dying, was different for humans. In most species, death was final. But humans? They feared it. They fought against it. They defied it. The researchers studied human medicine. They discovered surgery techniques that reversed fatal wounds, drugs that stopped death itself, machines that replaced failing organs, limbs, even hearts. Humans weren't just strong, they were obsessed with surviving. They refused to accept their own mortality. They weren't just resilient, they were relentless, and if they ever turned that relentlessness on the galaxy, nothing would stop them. The cultural divide, art, religion, and madness, for all their brutality, humans had another side, one that made even less sense. The researchers explored human art, philosophy, and religion, and what they found shocked them even more. Humans weren't just killers, they were dreamers. They painted images that made hearts ache. They composed music that brought tears. They built stories that could inspire entire civilizations. No other species had such depth. Most cultures had practical inventions. Humans? Humans built cathedrals just to reach the sky. They wrote poetry just to feel something. They created gods out of nothing, and then went to war over them. Their species was a contradiction. At their worst, they were monsters. At their best, they were divine, and that made them even more dangerous because it wasn't just their strength that made them terrifying. It was their ideas. The final report. The Council's nightmare. After months of study, the research team sent their final message. Humans cannot be classified as normal. They are unlike any species we have ever encountered. If they reach the stars, the galaxy will change forever. The council panicked. Some wanted to contain them. Others wanted to exterminate them. A few suggested diplomacy. But one thing was certain. Humanity would not stay on Earth forever, and when they left, no one would be ready. The warning: humanity is coming. Kevin's final decision. Kevin Jenkins had done the impossible. The immigration officer had watched it with his own eyes. A lone human, unarmed, tearing through some of the most feared predators in the galaxy. The hunters had always been a nightmare. Unstoppable, unkillable. But Kevin, he killed them. He ripped them apart with his bare hands. And now, the entire galaxy knew his name. The council wanted answers. The scientists wanted explanations. The media wanted to make him a legend, but Kevin wanted to go home. "You could stay," the officer had told him. "The council will protect you now. You're famous." Kevin just shook his head. "Nah, Earth's where I belong." The officer couldn't understand. Why would he go back? The galaxy had so much to offer: safety, stability, comfort. But Kevin's answer was simple. He looked at the officer and smiled. Because down there are still challenges worth fighting for. And with that, he was gone. The galaxy holds its breath. The council tried to keep the news contained. They failed. The moment the footage leaked, the galaxy erupted. The military strategists panicked. The political leaders debated. The scientists went silent, because the truth was clear. The humans were dangerous. The humans were coming. And no one could stop them. Some suggested destroying Earth. Others wanted to quarantine the system. A few even argued for welcoming them into the stars. But the ones who had seen the footage, the ones who had watched Kevin Jenkins in action, they knew there was no stopping this. Because Earth wasn't just home to Kevin Jenkins. It was home to billions more just like him. The unstoppable future. The research station remained in orbit. Every day, it sent back reports. Every day it confirmed the same terrifying truth. Humanity was advancing. They were pushing their technology further. They were reaching toward the stars. They were not stopping. The galaxy had millennia of peace. But peace was a lie. Because the only reason the galaxy had peace was because humans weren't part of it yet. The final warning. The immigration officer, the one who had first met Kevin Jenkins, was promoted. His job: to help decide what to do when humans finally arrived. His conclusion: he sent a single report to the council. A simple warning. You must never let them know how powerful they are. If they ever realize their true strength, the galaxy will not be ready. And if they find out we kept them in the dark, there will be war. The council sat in silence, because they all knew the truth. It wasn't a matter of if. It was only a matter of when. One day humanity will reach the stars, and when they do, the stars will tremble. The story of Kevin Jenkins is just the beginning. Humanity is coming. The galaxy isn't ready, but that doesn't matter, because humans never wait for permission.